Hello, and welcome to Queries, the show where we discuss local Daytonian news. I'm your host, John Evans, and with me today is Colin Richards, a singer-songwriter here in Dayton.
Hello.
Welcome, Colin.
Thank you.
To get things started, I'd love to know what got you into the music industry.
Just the love of it, just sound. You know, it's I don't know. It's music on all different levels. It's kind of like that thing that everyone that you really want to try to grasp, and in some form or another, a lot of people do. But it's fleeting. You know, you as soon as you grab it, the song might end. And so I've just always been chasing the music. You know.
It's a wonderful chase. Is there anybody from your life that you pull inspiration from?
Yeah, my parents especially, they've always pushed me to just follow my dreams, and my relatives as well. They're all musically inclined, and we all play instruments, and it was just kind of like not necessarily trying to outdo your siblings, but you know, that sibling rivalry gets in there, and we just pushed each other and went to as many concerts as we all could.
It's wonderful having a familial background to it. So are your parents big supporters of you at your gigs, doing live performances? Are they there all the time?
Yeah, yep, they make it to every gig. Snowstorm or not, they're typically there. So that's always awesome, you know, see them in the crowd and things like that.
That's so great. So with your live performances, you go throughout Dayton, you perform. With your performances, are they covers mostly, or do you do a lot of your own original writing?
These days, more of my originals, and I love sprinkling in some covers, as I put it. And you know, you kind of learn from all these other artists as you play their tunes, and that's a real early tradition in music. Is folk musicians would play each other's tunes, and then they'd add a verse or take away a verse and kind of improv it themselves or rewrite completely. And it's kind of like that. As I've grown as a musician, I've replaced the cover songs with my own songs, and just kept writing until I realized that, you know, I have all these tunes in these books, and they've all got a same groove of songs that I enjoy anyways. And it's like, well, let's bring them out. And the more I brought them out, the more people, I'd start seeing people know my songs. And so I was like, well, I'll play those now.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you think that you kind of found your own style of writing through the artists that you've kind of held up on that pedestal?
Yeah, I think a lot of writers, in a way, try to take the best and leave the rest. You know, you take everything you love or what inspires you, and anytime you're inspired, you take a piece of that with you, whether it's physically shown in the works, or it's like, oh, I can feel where they're coming from, or I can feel how that might have been interpreted from that song. So yeah, it's a lot like that.
That's great. How would you categorize your style? Like, if you could pull individuals or just a general style of music? So
early, and a lot of the stuff I play around solo is folk blues, some of that early Dust Bowl blues kind of thing, and it's great. I love it, and the feeling of it. Really, it can be just foot tapping type of music, or just really engulf you in the story. And folk, where that comes in, is the storylines of things. A lot of that, just, I don't know, it's not so much about what you're playing, but it's about the storyline of it. And a lot these days, with everything moving so fast, people don't typically have time to hear the story. You know, you're like, you know, you're ready. The don't bore us, get to the chorus kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I love the stories of, I mean, that's the way they got there. That's what that song's essence was pulled out of. It was, you know, here's my physical emotion in sound. And so with my solo, it's a lot of folk blues, and I have a blues band that we play around called Spare Change. So it's Colin Richards and Spare Change, and always with a variety of different musicians. It's great. I have all these tunes that I've written, and a lot can be transferred to electric blues, a lot of the acoustic stuff. So I'll get these guys in that will play and pull their own style into it. And so that way, every show's typically different. It varies, kind of on the same way like the Grateful Dead had a lot of people that knew all their songs, but not a lot of their songs were tracked. And it was like, how did these people know these songs without them being laid down and produced and pushed out? And it was they came to the shows, they experienced it, and every show was typically different. so they kind of grasped onto that. It's like you held on to what you weren't expecting.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's inspirational.
Thank you.
So here in Dayton, do you find that there is a lot of opportunity with performing with others or even by yourself at, be it any location here in Dayton?
Yeah, there's a lot of growth happening, and you can kind of feel it. There's an underground buzz, and in the last 15 to 20 years, I feel like it's been boiling. It's been getting there, but a lot of us are aging into where, as artists and performers, you're kind of not. You're not the young talented kid anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're the adult that's still doing it, that's pursuing, and it's like, oh, a lot of the elders in the community respect that. You've got someone that's really striving and still continuing on, and Dayton is really cool for all the opportunities around to meet people, because there's a lot of people that are all coming of age into the scene, and then little do they know they create their own scene just by being excited for one another and pushing each other. And so yeah, it's been great being over here, and always have had a good time performing in Dayton.
Yeah, it's amazing. Because I know that there's a lot of like areas within even the Oregon district downtown that do a lot of open mic nights, and just places that I see a lot of local artists get gigs. So it's cool to hear the inner works of how the scenes work and how they can evolve and change over time.
Yeah, a great scene can make a great musician, and a bad scene can make a musician travel to find the good one.
One thing I was wondering too is, how do you deal with those days? Because I'm sure with the amount of time you've been performing, there have probably been gigs where they don't go the best. How do you deal with those?
Well, it's kind of one of those things. I've played many shows, hours long, to empty rooms before, and even with a compensation on it, it doesn't feel like you earned it. I might have performed it, but they're hard, man. That's really what keeps pushing you to make the rooms fill up. Mm-hmm. It's like this could be a hard experience, and when you get through it, you're like, oh, that's where the growth happened.
Yeah.
That's really when you learn to be a musician that can handle a full room, so you don't take it for granted.
No, yeah, that's a great mindset to have. Mm-hmm. And when it is a full room, are there ways that you kind of engage with the audience or your scene to get it more of that energy you want people to know Colin Richards as? Yeah,
I love it. Having an audience, talking to them and everything. One of my big early inspirations was Arlo Guthrie, and he talks and brings the audience in, almost brings them on stage essentially, with involving them in the conversation of music. So you might tell a story about how you wrote a song or an experience that got you there. Or how, just there's so many different ways to engage an audience, and I've seen too many shows with people just kind of standing like robots, and it doesn't move you.
Yeah.
I want to be like, I love the music, but I want to see it moving through them. Sometimes all physically, and then you have them talking to you and letting you know, hey, thank you for coming. At very least, thank you for coming out. That's such a big one. I typically say that at every show, because it's really, like I said, those empty rooms, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so you do write a lot of your music. Mm-hmm. I'd say like most of the music. What does the writing process look like for you? Is it something that comes to you in a song, or is it something where you sit down and you have that creativity come to you?
It's really hard to force a song sometimes, mm-hmm. and there's times when you have to, and you're like, all right, it's just been one of those days, I need to write. Sometimes it happens like that, or it just comes to you. I could be walking, I could be doing laundry, and then I hear something, or I might say something in passing of just a string of words, just as a poetic nonsense, and hear it, and it kind of sends off a little chime. It's like, maybe I ought to write that down, if not for right now, then for later, and then use it on something else.
Have you been writing like your entire music career, or is it something that you began doing covers and then moved into something more creative with writing?
Some of my earliest music memories were writing things, yeah, and It's funny. It's just how things evolve and learn. And I always took an interest in English in school, and not that I aced it or anything like that, but I enjoyed the idea of a structure, and then I also enjoyed the idea of kind of breaking the structure. And poetry kind of spoke to me in that. Dylan Thomas and a lot of those early poets, they phrased their things in stanzas that kind of reminded me of music. And I'm like, oh, well, if that's written like that, that really is poetic art. Music is poetry, and poetry is music in my eyes.
Yeah, there's the lyrical poetry of that, and it's, yeah, you can pull a lot of inspiration just from that. And you also mentioned that you grew up in a family of just musically inclined individuals, and you all kind of had that competitive atmosphere of playing instruments. And do you play multiple instruments?
I do, yeah. I try to dabble in a bit of everything, and just know where other people might be coming from. If there's a part that's hard to learn and it's easier than just saying, oh, hey, just play it like this. And instead of like just chucking at them information of like, oh, I want it done like this, which I don't like speaking to anybody like that, but like having the instrument and be like, well, here's how I kind of played it. And if that works for you, then run it like that if you like, or if you can adapt off that. So learning everything, it's just, I just think it's a language that there's always things to be learned, and I didn't see the point of restricting myself to one language. It was like, I love the guitar, and then I learned about the harmonica, and from then on it was just hats off to the races, just tried everything. I found playing piano was a lot like playing the guitar. There's a lot going on in both hands, rhythmically and melody, and I just don't ever see the reason to stop.
It's great. It's like the evolution of music within your own atmosphere. It's great. So you've mentioned that like with working with other people, do you find that in Dayton there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration with other up-and-coming solo artists?
I think there is, yeah. And if it ever feels like there isn't, it's typically turned around in a couple days of finding someone new to perform with. People, I think people want to learn. They want to groove. They want to get their emotions out there, and more people are finding music to be that pathway. And it's safe, and you really can let it all out. There's whether you know how to play or not, or you can hit on a drum, hit on a bongo, anything that really just lets you express yourself through sound. Musically in Dayton, I found there to be a lot of expression, and it's great. And it's even people moving. I've noticed people moving back to Dayton from being elsewhere, finding their sound, and then they come back and they're like, yeah, the scene's going again. It's up and running, and so the bigger it gets, the more people want to be involved with it, and I think it's just going to keep growing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you've mentioned before that you travel beyond Dayton, and that even as far as New York. Can you just talk about some of those experiences you've had? Yeah,
so the New York trip, I was in a place where I'd been playing to a lot of empty rooms per se, and I was like, you know what, I'm feeling stale. I'm feeling like I need to figure out why I was doing this and why I'm continuing to, because it's hardships. You really do put yourself in a place to not succeed unless you're consistent, and then you don't, like any growing self-born business per se, if you can put that title on it, is you don't see any revenue back or anything like that to help stabilize yourself for at least 5 years. And so being in it now 10 years, I've started to be able to continue on and be able to push further. But at that particular time, things weren't rolling in my direction, and I was like, man, I need to go to where music really, where a lot of that inspiration got its birth from. And a lot of the old travelers, Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, there was this folk mecca in New York, in Greenwich Village, and I'd heard about it, and there's an open mic that's still running that ran back then. And Hendrix played on that stage for the open mic, and a handful of other performers on it. It was just the spot people really were drawn to. So I might have been 55 years late, but I was like, I'm going to throw the guitar in the car and hop on the road and find it. So I went down that way and got into this open mic, and it was great. Yeah, I didn't have anything but I didn't even have a harmonica on me because the place they had a backing band for their open mic, which kind of threw me off. I was used to like a solo setup at the time. I was like, all right, well, I'll just leave the guitar. And I walked in, I was like, can you throw me some blues out of A? And they all kind of looked at each other, all these stage musicians, and kind of just started in with just a 12-bar blues. And then I just started singing the vocals over it. And that was really how I kind of learned that I could have a live electric blues band, a voice to fill those rooms, essentially. Because still with folk music, it's so mellow, and as I was saying, the storytelling, some people really have a hard time paying attention to that, and it's just how we're structured in this day and age. It's just the way it is. But I found with electric and with live blues and stuff, it's hard to ignore someone crunching music at you or yelling the blues and just really feeling it. So you're sweating down, you're rocking and rolling, your guitar strap might break. You might break a string because you're so into it, but that crowd, they're in it now too. So any mishap that happens is worth it. So I found with doing those two things together, the folk music and the blues, it was an idea that was really birthed when I took that trip, because I took a trip for folk music and I left with the blues, and not just because my pockets were empty after it. It was just because that's the way it goes.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it's so clear that you have an image of your own personal brand within your music.
Thank you.
And that you can pull that inspiration from the artists that you looked up to, even when you started within it. And it's great that you had a trip like that really defined what you are as a musician moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask, seeing what your personal brand of music is right now, how do you see that changing, evolving, or stepping into the future?
I think that's kind of the thing, is stepping in the future, all for it, but hanging out in not necessarily the past, but the music's present, but my feeling of things can be on a past tense type of groove. I like not looking like everybody looks today, and just traveling on and keeping things on into the future. I think I think just moving forward is the best way to find the future. Yeah. Versus if I sit here and think about it, it's already been past tense.
Well, that's great, and we'd love to hear some of it, but right now we're going to take a break, but stick around and we'll hear Colin perform. Welcome back to Queries. With us today is Colin Richards, and he's here to perform some of the music he has.
Hello. This one I'll be doing is it's the single off my upcoming album, Feeder of the Dog. And this one I wrote at a time when those empty rooms seemed real empty. This one's called Moon Howls. When I howl at the moon, little baby, ooh, the moon howls back. When I howl at the moon,
Thank you so much, Colin. That was fantastic. It's been so much fun having you here on Queries as well. We'd love to know where to stream your music or if there's any upcoming live performances that you're doing.
Yeah, it'll be on all music streaming platforms, everything, Apple, iTunes, everything. Coming this week. Actually, I apologize. The single will be out this week on all music streaming platforms, and the full album, Theater of the Dog, will be out in the following weeks. I'll be playing on February 5th at 2nd Street Market here in town. And then on February 11th, I'll be in Yellow Springs playing at Trailtown Brewing.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for again coming on our show. And thank you to everyone watching. This has been Queries. Again, stream Colin's music on all platforms. And if you want to see him live perform, see him live perform. Till next time, have a wonderful day.